I didn't want to ask anyone to go on vacation anymore. I didn't want to ask for days off. And it's weird to say, I had a peace. Not like a peace that he was gone, but a peace that I wasn't going to be alone. Since he was struck, the electricity went through me too. It didn't hit me directly, but since I was in close contact with him, his body was up against mine. Are you gonna cry?
Maybe. Possibly.
And
I'm human. I can't be human? Jesus
yes,
Christ.
No, I love it. What we think, we tend to believe. And so that book really made a huge impact on the thoughts that I had and the thoughts that I was choosing to believe.
Okay. Well, we're not here to talk about the past. We're here to talk about the here and now.
Okay, go.
Sheryl Hidalgo, who I met in 2017. You were my student.
Wow, you even know the year.
For sure. 2016, actually. 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's pretty cool. It's cool when you see people through these stages of their life, right? I was well into my adult life. I was like 32, 33 years old.
Grown man.
Grown ass man. Dragging my daughter Eva to class. And then I've seen you progress from an ER nurse to an entrepreneur and to just a woman who's kicking ass. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, same for you, right? What were you doing 5 years ago? You were still at UM, right? 2020 you left?
2020, I was dismissed.
You were dismissed. And it was the best thing that ever happened to you.
It was.
Yes or no?
100%.
Right? And look at you now. I walked in here. First of all, you have all the girls in the front. I'm like, oh, this is so official.
Yeah.
I go to the bathroom. Oh, even the bathroom's official. It's the small things, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I guess it's the same way I walked into your space the other day. I was like, yo, who's your interior designer? Because I need to update the new space.
Well, shout out to White This Way.
Shout out to White This Way. They just sent me a quote. We're going to have a discussion soon.
It'll be worth it. Whatever it is.
For sure.
Just pay it.
No. Definitely worth it. But yeah, no, definitely. I've seen you go through this progression, right? And I think via Instagram, people just see like success,
right,
growth, and a lot of positive things that are going on, but they don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes and all the work that's involved in your day-to-day.
Right.
So I guess my first question is, how do you feel you've changed over this period of time? Let's go back to 2017 to 2025. It's 8 years.
Wow. I mean, where do I start?
Wherever you want.
So at that time I was working I was in nurse practitioner school at UM, and I was working as a nurse in West Kendall. And that was my identity. I was an ER nurse. And then you graduate and then you go on to become a nurse practitioner. I started working at Children's, and I was working my ass off. It was like you had to see 13 to 15 patients per shift, and it was just getting things done rather than focusing on actually treating the patient. It was like, oh, but I have to hurry up because I have to see X amount of patients before my 12-hour shift is done.
Of course.
And then 2020 happened to me too. We got furloughed, and I was taken aback because I thought to myself, I am practically considered a first responder in the ER, and we're being temporarily laid off. So at that point I decided, okay, there has to be a shift that happens now. And so the lighting's not good enough.
Supposed to have a backlight here, but whatever.
And so that's when I said, okay, what else do I want to do? I love pediatrics, but I also loved aesthetics. And I didn't know exactly, but I knew I really loved skin mainly. So I actually got a job. I worked both jobs for a while, and then I got really busy at my aesthetics job, and I eventually left Children's and still went from an employee, but I still always had that entrepreneur mindset. And I knew that I didn't want to ask anyone to go on vacation anymore. I didn't want to ask for days off.
That's amazing. That's a great motivator, right?
Yes, it was, because we take long vacations, and it's like, okay, Sheryl, you can take that vacation, but that's your last vacation for the year. You can only take that 1-2 week vacation. And I said, I don't want to do that anymore. And I want to be able to tell myself when I'm going to come in and when I'm going to leave and have control of my time. That's all we have now. So, yeah. So I decided to open Naked Aesthetics, and here we are almost 3 years later, and the growth has been insane. Not just business wise, but personal growth, right? It's something that I've always actually took my personal growth journey serious. Like 2015, 2016 is when I started it. I discovered who Tony Robbins was. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because he was the one that started to open my eyes to all kinds of growth, right? Spiritual, emotional. And now it's just on another level. And you think of how you were back then, and it's hard to compare and it's hard to put it in words too, but it's just something that gradually happens.
We all have someone who definitely has a major impact on us, right? For me, it was Gary Vee, listening to him like in 2019 before I got laid off from UM. Just for those of you who are listening who are fans of Sheryl, like me. Yeah, I was laid off as a professor in 2020. I had been a professor at the University of Miami from 2015 to 2020. On June 1st, 2020, I got this magical phone call. Actually, it was a Zoom invite where it was I've never told you the story.
I've heard like snippets
on
your story.
Yeah. So it was basically my immediate boss, the dean of the School of Nursing, and then the lady from HR. So I jumped on the call thinking we were going to be discussing what I was going to be teaching the next semester. Side note, I really wasn't happy as a professor. I didn't feel fulfilled. It wasn't what I expected it to be. I've always thought of myself as somebody who wants to inspire, to educate, to help people as they're coming up. And I learned that academia just has a lot of fluff, filler courses. And I felt like I was being plugged into a lot of those and then shifted semester to semester. So long story short, when they let me go, started AMP. And 5 years later, this is where I'm at. Gary Vee was a major just contributor to my mindset in 2019, heading into 2020 as I got laid off, just about posting and using social media to market yourself. It wasn't really till 2021 where I started speaking more on camera and just not giving a shit.
Right.
Because I feel like so many of us fear the judgment of everybody else. And that's what makes people hesitate to put themselves out there. They're like, oh no, but I don't want to seem pretentious, or I don't want to seem this. It's not what you seem. You be yourself, and whoever is watching is the judge of that. And you can't control the judgment of others. All you can be is yourself.
Right.
And so Gary Vee was a major contributor to me. Who else besides Tony Robbins has been a major contributor to you, to who you are, to your mindset?
So I read this book. Oh, in the book, I wrote down the first time, like the date that I read it. It might have been 2018, somewhere on there. And his name is Michael Singer. The book is called The Untethered Soul. And it is a very strong but light read, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I always tell everyone, I recommend it to everyone because it talks about the voice in your head. And I grew up being the quiet one. So I felt like I was in my head a lot. Mm-hmm. And what we believe, we tend to, what we think we tend to believe. Mm-hmm. And so that book really made a huge impact on the thoughts that I had and the thoughts that I was choosing to believe. Mm-hmm. So Michael Singer, I mean, he's incredible. And he has many other books, but that one is definitely one to read.
Could you grab that little piece of paper that's right there on the edge of the table? This one? Could you just read that?
Let's see, Frank Outlaw. Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. And it all starts with your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most people don't recognize what that inner voice is. Like, they don't realize like how their upbringing has influenced that inner voice, how their immediate family, how every experience has shaped that voice. And for a lot of people, it's not a healthy one.
Right. It's
one that's constantly negative, degrading, diminishing. And it's how do you get past that? So how, I guess you read this book. Yeah. What in the book helped that inner voice?
So it challenges you to answer questions, and not outright. It's not saying answer this question now, mm-hmm. but you start to ask the questions yourself. What are the stories that I'm creating in my head? Mm. Something as simple as you're driving and you pass by a tree and you're like, you think to yourself, there's a tree. And the book says it like so much better, but why did I have to say that? it's just this voice in our head that is constantly talking. And it's about honestly getting in that driver's seat and controlling what that voice is telling you, and recognizing that just because the voice is talking doesn't mean that it's saying the truth or something that's helpful to you. So that 100% was eye-opening for me, just to realize that, wow, I do have these extra thoughts. And then I think as women, I mean, I guess I'll just talk for myself.
Go for it.
We do like to create stories in our head. And
like what? Tell me more.
Oh
What
my
stories?
gosh.
What stories are you creating, or what stories in general do women create, or you yourself create?
well, let's say you're like, how old was I? 26, 27, you're dating a guy, and then something as simple, let's just say, I'm not saying that this was a specific occurrence, but let's say someone doesn't text you back.
We're speaking hypotheticals.
Yes,
people.
exactly. My friend told me someone doesn't text you back, and you create all these stories in your head, and then they text back and you're like, okay, everything's fine. You know what I mean?
Or they text you and you completely misinterpret the text.
Correct.
And you create your own
Exactly. Your own narrative.
Your own narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. So other than Gary Vee, who's it for you? Let me ask you this.
Go for it.
Someone that you do know. How about that? Because we've already spoken about, I don't
100%.
personally know Tony Robbins.
Oh no, I mean, the whole reason that I have, and I feel like I'm just pitching my practice, but I'm not. This is my life. Like, my practice is my life.
Yeah.
My uncle Leo, who's right there on that wall, he's the bald guy. I love that guy. That guy's amazing.
They all have the same eyes.
Yeah, no,
That's
I have
so
the same
cute.
eyes too. That's my dad right there with the tires, right? And so my uncle Leo, so my dad was exactly that, what he's pictured as there. Super nice portrait, by the way. I took it.
It's beautiful.
No, I'm just kidding.
Another plug.
Yeah, another flick. No, so my dad was always just that guy, right? He's the working man. He is tending to his family, but from a place of being a provider. But my dad and I have conversations when I go visit him right there at the tire shop. But it was my uncle Leo who throughout my childhood was always like either taking me to a park, or the first time I picked up a golf club was with Leo. The first time I picked up a camera, honestly, was because of his influence.
Really?
So it was just different things like that where it was always in my mind. But in the same breath, since I was like 6 or 7, I saw my uncle going through this cycle of crisis, hospitalization, discharge, crisis, hospitalization, discharge, because he suffered from schizophrenia, which to most people is like, oh, that's bizarre, it's crazy. But it was just the norm for our family, where it was like, Leo is sick. And so he had a major influence in both ways, where I started to realize how the significance of mental health, but also how somebody who's suffering with severe, persistent mental illness has a family that surrounds them, has kids, has a wife, has a whole life. And I think that's the reason I started, or I always had an interest in mental health, was because of him. I used to cry talking about this, especially when I'm like in front of a crowd. So I'm glad that I've said it enough times where those emotions are under control now. But before, this used to be like, my voice is shaking, and because this is your life. Yeah. These are the people who surround you, and these are the people that you love. And yeah, it's definitely my uncle Leo, who I love the guy to this day, and he's doing a lot better. He's stable, and I mean, again, he's the reason why I'm here at A&P Mental Health.
When you were young, did you understand the gravity of his illness? Like, to what extent did you understand, right? Because how old were you when you were told or explained? I
was never really thoroughly explained, like most Hispanic families. It was just more of that same stigma, and it was, Leo is sick. Leo is sick. And, Leo está enfermo. And sick means that he's just not doing well. He's isolated. He may not be showering. He may go wander the streets. And so a lot of people who don't have a strong support system are the people who wander the streets. And so that's what led me later on to work at Camilla's house, because I understood how my uncle could have easily wandered somewhere completely, detached from the family. And then if that support system or that bridge no longer exists, then they're off into the abyss. And so, yeah, for sure, my uncle Leo. Nah, Leo, I love you, man. You're the man, for real. I appreciate you for everything that you ever did for me. We don't talk as much as we used to for whatever reasons. He's busy, I'm busy. But it's always on those drives where somebody pops into your mind. and I just call.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's up, man?" He's an elevator mechanic, so sometimes he's like, "Oh, I'm on the 50th story. This is a brand new building," you know. And so yeah, that's him for sure. It's him.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Good.
that's it. I know something I wanted to talk about.
You're trying to make me cry. When we spoke on the phone about today, you're like, "Well, get ready to cry." We're not crying today.
I don't know why. Whenever people come in here, I don't know if it's because of mental health office or. No, for real. I think somewhere in our subconscious, we're aware of the arena we're stepping into and like the person that you're engaging with. So you're willing to be more vulnerable. And I find, and this has been throughout my life, that people have always been willing to be more vulnerable with me. I'm sure you have the same experience when patients are in your chair.
Yeah.
And so it's never my intention, because I could sit here and talk to you about entrepreneurship all day.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep it business and keep it moving. But both of us, I think are a little bit, we look for things that nurture our soul, and especially in the human experience, because you've suffered in life, right? And I'm not trying to make you cry.
No. I think I've said it also enough times that I'm okay.
Let's see.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding.
Let's put it to the test.
No. Like, so you've been through some different things in your life that most people would think as like their worst nightmare.
Right.
Whether it's losing your parents at a young age or whatever the case may be. I guess tell us a little bit about that so that the audience understands a little bit of yourself, if you're comfortable with it.
No, I am.
Just tell us a little bit about that and how that evolved you just in the human experience itself, because I think that you come with a very fresh perspective because of these experiences.
And I can agree with that. Where do I start? So at the ripe age, no, I'm just kidding. I grew up it was me, my two sisters, Charlotte and Charlene, and my mom and my dad. Eventually, at some point, I don't remember the time, but they were became divorced. And I would see my dad every other weekend, and we were living primarily with my mom. So one weekend we were with my dad, and my mom was, my gosh, a lover of life. She would fish. She would loved boating. She loved everything. She was actually technically a race car driver,
What do you mean?
which I think that's why I get my speed from her. But yeah, she would take us to meets on Wednesdays. I don't know if you remember that, on Bird Road.
Oh, that's old school though. Yeah.
But she used to take us, mind you, I was 12 when she passed away. So who knows what age I was when she was taking her 3 daughters to these meets, and then would go racing with us.
She would race herself.
She would race. Yes.
Do you have pictures of this? Of her like in what kind of car? I asked so many questions.
Actually, I asked my uncle the other day because I needed to know. I needed to know what car she would race in. Yeah. And he tells me
a Monte Carlo.
A Toyota Corolla E20.
A souped up Corolla.
Yes. And he said it had a rotary motor, but the body is Toyota. And I had to look up what a rotary motor was. I had no idea what that was. Don't ask me what it is. I forgot by now. But so anyways, one weekend she was with her husband in the Keys, and it's something that they would do often. He was also a fisher. He loved being out on the water and in the Keys. And on their drive back, this was before they had a median on the stretch down to the Keys. Well, down even just to like Key Largo, right?
Gotcha.
Like that.
Mm-hmm.
The area from wall. Exactly.
A little blue wall that everybody takes a little video of when they're heading to the Keys.
Correct.
Yeah.
Before, at this time, this was 2002. I don't know when they put the blue wall up, but it wasn't up at this time. Anyways, they were on their way back from the Keys, from the stories that I can remember. And there was another car that I think was speeding or racing, and they crashed into each other or whatever. There was 4 people in the other car. All of them passed away immediately. And then my stepdad, Damien, also passed away. And my mom was the only one that was alive. But she was taken to Jackson, declared brain dead, and was unplugged. I don't know if there's like a better way to say that. 3 days later. So now I'm going to cry. Only because there's lights.
Yeah.
The lights.
Only because it's the lights. It's bright in here.
Yeah. So after that, we live with my dad, me, my 2 sisters. Eventually, my dad and I find ourselves together alone alone, as in the two other sisters move out. And it was the most amazing time of my life. And I say that because I had him from 12 to 16. And for me, I think those were the most influential years in my life. And I don't know if in just teenagers as a whole, right? Because it's like an interesting time in anyone's life. They're in middle school and approaching high school. But we had so much time together, and his values, it's crazy. Because I knew him before, right? I've known my dad my whole life, but I felt like I knew him even more during this time. It was just us two, and he would preach to me all the time, and Sheryl, you should do this and you shouldn't do that, and just give me life lessons. Gotcha. And a short 4 years later, after my mom passed away, we were going to ATV ride. And I remember either the day before or the morning of, he tells me, we're going to go ATV riding, which is something that we always did. And we're going to go mudding. And I asked him, can I take Ruth, which was one of my best friends, because it was going to be him, my two cousins, and a friend from church, which is another guy. I was like, well, I'm going to be the only girl. Can I invite Ruth? And he's like, no, Ruth can't come this time. It's just us. I don't have an extra ATV. So the 5 of us go out, and it's crazy because there was 4 ATVs, but 5 of us. So I'm the only girl. I'm his daughter. I go on the ATV with him. He had a little bit of like a beer belly. I don't know if it was from beer, but so I was riding behind him, and that at one point I was always very adventurous too. So I said, let me get in the front and let me drive. And he lets me drive, but we were hitting these potholes. It was like pothole after pothole. Every time I would hit it, my hand would kind of let go of the accelerator. So we would hit it even harder. And he's like, okay, Sheryl, you're done. You got to get to the back now. So I get behind him. And since his belly was big, I didn't really hold on to him that way. He was wearing a JanSport book bag. And I was holding on to the straps here. And that's how I held on to him. We're out in the Everglades by an area called Belglade. And it starts to rain. And I even told him, I said, I've never ridden in the rain. And I remember putting my head back and like feeling it. I was like, oh, I love this. This is so nice. And then it started to pour. And since he was the only adult, he was, I think I always have to calculate it each time. I think it was 35 or 36. Cousins were 9, 10. I was 15 and the other kid was 16. And it starts to pour. And then it starts to thunder. And so he's like, okay, everyone turn around. And it happened like from one second to the next, as I remember it. The 2 kids turn around, then Johnny turns around, and then we turn around. And then all of a sudden, I just hear what sounded like a gunshot. And it kind of took me a second. I felt like my head was all the way back and my hands were like tightly holding on to his book bag. And then once everything relaxed, my head came back forward and he falls to the ground. And it was pouring where you could barely see anything in front of you. And I sat there on the ATV and I thought, what the heck just happened? I had no idea. And still, like, I didn't have an idea, but I go down to check on him and I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do? So I get back on the ATV and I'm trying to wave my hands and I try to scream so that the kids can hear me and they can turn around, and nothing comes out. I feel like I have a huge frog in my throat and nothing is coming out. I'm like, Anyways, I don't know at what point they looked back. They all turned around and all 4 of us tried to get him onto the ATV. But again, he's
a big guy.
Yeah. He wasn't fat, but he was big enough that we weren't going to be able to do that. So the 2 kids get on his ATV because it was the fastest, it was the biggest. And I'm like, just go find help. Mind you, again, we're in the middle of nowhere. It's pouring. And Johnny and I started doing CPR. I don't even know who thought of it, who said it. He was doing chest compressions. I was doing mouth to mouth. And his tongue was rolling. And I was like, I knew it. I was like, he's not here. And it was raining a lot again. And I remember thinking to myself, like, not again. Are you going to cry?
Maybe. Possibly.
And
I'm human. I can't be human? Jesus Christ.
No, I love it. And
You're gonna cry. Damn, Cheryl. Wait a minute.
so we could stop. No.
So we can stop. We can just go.
So I remember thinking not again, but it was weird because I had, and it's weird to say, I had a peace. Not like a piece that he was gone, but a piece that I wasn't going to be alone. If that's, I know it's weird to say, but it was an interesting thing that I always remember. And I don't remember a lot because I feel that, and I guess you can say more on it, but when you deal with trauma, I feel over the years, your brain tries to protect you. Mm-hmm. And so there are many things that you don't remember. And I don't remember a lot of things with my mom. And mind you, I was 12. So I feel like I should know a lot more than I do. But anyways, what felt like an eternity, there's like, we see the helicopters and we see ambulance. And then finally they find us and we had to leave him. Like, and to me, that was like the saddest thing. Because I'm like, he's literally in grass. And like, I don't even know how tall it was, but I'm like, they're never going to find him. And they were looking and looking, I don't know how long, but they eventually found him. And thankfully I was okay. And I remember that one time my dad said, like, the saddest thing that you can do is bury your child. And so I'm thankful that I'm here. And
so were you were holding onto his bag and he got struck by lightning and that's how you just fell off?
No. So he was struck and this is what I can presume.
Yeah.
That since he was struck, the electricity went through me too. It didn't hit me directly, but since I was in close contact with him, his body was up against mine. Mm-hmm. That it went through me, and that's why my hands contracted and my head flung back. And then when I came to, we were both still on the ATV. When I guess the energy left our body, he fell to the ground. And I was still sitting there thinking, what the heck happened?
Like, it almost doesn't make sense, though, right? Like, I guess I'm not an expert, but
no, me either.
So yeah, it just sounds bizarre. When I was young, I used to have this, and I remember the first time you told me the story, I would have these nightmares. Sheesh. Told you.
It's kind of like a movie. I know you did.
Yeah, I used to have these nightmares where my family was apart from me somewhere, and they would get struck by lightning.
Really?
Since I was little.
And it was multiple dreams?
Multiple dreams.
Really?
I have a couple of recurring dreams, and that's one of them. My family being struck by lightning, and then tornadoes. Don't ask me why. Tornadoes have always been present.
Are they a fear?
No. We were in Aruba, and we saw a twister in the distance, and Rebecca was like, "Are you okay? Like, are you nervous?" I'm like, I mean, that thing is way out there.
Yeah. Fine, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm okay. I'm not worried. If it starts coming this way, I hope you're scared too.
Right.
But yeah, it's just when the first time you told me the story, I just remember thinking, wow, you've experienced probably the worst thing that I imagined for me. And it's like, I don't even know what else to say except how did that situation somehow made you stronger? You felt like you weren't alone, right? And you had lost your mom just a few years before. You're losing your dad, who you felt a strong connection to. And then, I don't know, where did that sense of peace come from, I guess?
Well, it wasn't always that way, right? I remember having that memory or that thought, that sensation, that feeling then and there while everything was happening. And mind you, I'm 16 years old. When my mom passed away, I was 12, turning 13, and I was in middle school, and I like to call it a distraction. Like, I don't feel that I realized the magnitude of what it was. And thankfully, I also think because my dad was so loving and so amazing that he really filled that role in an amazing way. And I had other people in my life who filled it too. But when my dad passed away, I also felt it. But again, I was also very distracted at the time too. Then I actually went on to live with Ruth and her mom, and then I lived with my uncle, and then I went to college. And I would say it was around college, 18, 19, 20, was when it really hit me. And that's when I actually did feel alone. And I just felt like, of course, you have people around you, and, you know, your sister's always like, oh, but you can always talk to me. But I always felt that, but they don't understand, you know? And of course they understand, but that was whatever, the lies that I told myself. And I struggled with when it would storm. Like there were times that I could not handle it. And not until 26 was then I was like, okay, something has to stop. I have to improve. And it's not that I was bad, but it was just those thoughts were taking a hold, not even just, it was hitting every aspect of my life. And I was doing great in life, but I knew the one thing that needed to be worked on was my mind. And that sense of peace came from my dad taking me to church every weekend. And poor guy, I remember he's like, you get up so easily to go to school, but when Sunday comes around, you don't want to wake up. But it was so worth it now that I think about it, because he instilled a foundation of faith in me. And I carry it every day. And I always tell God, like, you have never forsaken me, ever, 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 ever. In every aspect of my life, I always feel like I'm taken care of. You know, there are things that are hard. Of course, life always has its ups and downs. But when you know that someone has your back, and I'm talking about God, my gosh, you just approach life differently because you know that it's going to work out. And it sounds so cliche to say, but when you really do experience that peace, it is amazing, because anything that I'm going through, I tell myself, I've gone through the worst. Like, what else could happen that's going to be worse than that? Nothing. Life is too short. I live life spontaneously because I'm like, one day I could be here, one day I can't. And not until I feel that you experience death that close do you actually realize that. So it was honestly the foundation of him. Like, I think of him all the time, even when I do business things. Actually, what was that book of the guy that you know that I was reading?
Max Lewis? Who is Max Lewis?
Yeah. Who is Max Lewis?
Shout out to Max Lewis.
Yes. I still have to finish reading the book. But he talks about, I don't know how old he was, but he would sell lollipops in school.
Yeah. Airheads and lollipops.
Yeah.
Same.
And so did you do that?
I did that.
I did that too.
Yeah. I still remember the profit margins. It was $5.40 for the box of Airheads from Costco, and you would sell it for like, I think it was like $13.20. So there was always like a $7 profit per box.
There you go.
I still remember it.
So entrepreneur at heart from the beginning.
Yeah.
My dad would go to BJ's and buy it for me. And I remember, do you know that drawer at the bottom of the stove that like you don't know what to put in there?
Yeah.
We had that. And that's where I had like my whole stash, all of my inventory, all of my cash, all of my quarters. And my gosh, I owe everything to my dad, because it was him who was encouraging and just a foundation of peace and stability that led me from that moment of those teen years to what I experience now. And thankfully, I'm blessed enough to have people in my life who knew him, and we still talk about him. Like one of his best friends was, one time we were in the Keys talking, and he says, we have to keep him alive. And I said, but how do we do that? He's like, you just keep talking about him. And so here we are.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
See, I lose track of what I was going to say. You think you have these questions lined up, and it's like,
actually,
go ahead.
Okay,
I know what I was going to say.
Well, don't lose it now.
I won't.
What I am going to say is, you know, when someone hears this story, I'll say two things. They think that this is the unimaginable, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess in a way it is, but I'll say one, in that the way that someone, I have a friend who her boyfriend passed away maybe like 10 years into the relationship. I think it's going to be like 8 years ago at this point. And I remember talking to her one day, and she said, I don't know how you did it, Sheryl. Like, this was just my boyfriend, and you did it with your parents. And I said, no. Don't tell yourself that story, because death is death.
Yeah. Loss is loss.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Thank you. It doesn't matter that it was your grandmother, your boyfriend, a friend. You know, when he passed away, that hurt me. And I hadn't spoken to him in a long time, but I had seen him 2 days prior to him passing. And that hit me in such a way that I realized loss is loss. It doesn't matter whether it's your parent or whatever. One doesn't make one greater than the other. And two, the way in which my dad left this earth is powerful. If you look at the statistics, I can't remember them, of course, at this moment, but it's one in a huge number of not only people who get struck by lightning, but also people who pass, because there are a lot of people who do survive. And it was as if he was like, God said, you're mine. You've done your job. He was one of the most influential people on a lot of people. Oh, so many people. Anyone that meets me now is like, oh, you're Eddie's daughter? You're Eddie's daughter? Everyone knows who Eddie was. So I'm honored that was the way that he went, because it makes an even stronger story that, you know, his God, our God, was looking after him too.
Two things I've gathered from what you've been talking about. One, so first let me rewind. You called me initially and you said, oh, I'm interested in starting a podcast, blah, blah, blah. That's why we're sitting here right now. This started with a conversation over the phone, and this was last week, and I said, come in, let's just do a podcast. And then as I was talking to you, I was kind of explaining like the value of the podcast. And to outsiders, they think, when they think of a podcast, they look at views right away. You go on YouTube, how many views does it have? What's the impact of this, you know?
Right.
And right now you're speaking to me, you're sharing your life with me. I don't know how many people are going to listen to this, but you're having a major impact in my life. For real. Because you're talking to me. Number one, the way that you're speaking about your father, I hope that my daughter will speak that way about me. You know? Because I think as a parent, like, you impart so much on them and you don't know
to what extent.
Number two is that I grew up in church. Faith was always a major part of my life. And as you're talking, I'm realizing, like, how much of that have I gifted to Eva, to my daughter? Or have I withheld that, right? Because of my own cynicism or views that get changed as you grow and as you experience life. And I'm realizing, like, my grandmother just died. So I'm like in this whirlwind right now as you're talking to me. And so that's the value of the podcast. It's not the views. It's not these lights. It's just like you zone in here and you engage with somebody else uninterrupted. Both of our phones are face down. They're on silent. And all you have is these mics and these headphones, and you're just transmitting back and forth experiences. And I think as a society, we've lost a lot of this. At least for a man, I can't say that I sit down with my friends. Women go in deep. Women counsel each other all day.
The most deep.
Yeah. They talk about these little interactions that happen. Could you believe what he did? Yeah, we don't have that shit. We're like, yeah, she cooked dinner. Cool. Yeah, we went to sleep, had sex. Cool. All right, next. Like, there's nothing so deep about it. But it's interesting how women dissect, like, different parts of their life.
But I also do think that it's a little excessive as women.
Could be. But I think it's helpful.
It is helpful.
While men, we don't have the space in particular to really engage with somebody else, right? And, like, I'm not on a date right now, or I'm not there's no secondary gain here except exchanging ideas, exchanging our thoughts, exchanging our experiences. That carries a lot of value. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily monetary. It can be if we were talking about entrepreneurship and business goals and strategies. Cool. But it's also like we're sharing our life through these mics, into these headphones, which goes into our mind, which shapes our thoughts, which then drive our actions. So it's all full circle, but we're not getting enough of this because we're constantly just
Right.
So this is the value of the podcast. This is what I wanted to show you.
Yeah. And this is, so everyone also has a backstory. I started a Patreon, which is a subscription type model on
Here's the plug.
this website. No, I don't want you to subscribe to the Patreon, actually. I just want you to tune into the new podcast that we're going to be releasing. But I told him that, well, I told you that I started.
I'm right here.
But like I was talking to Instagram again. I told you that I started this in order to educate, and I was feeling like it was a job, and it was supposed to be something that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't fulfilling me. And I said, what can I do that can give me that outlet that I was seeking? And I thought of the conversations that I have every single day in my treatment room. Mm-hmm. And yes, we talk about skincare. That is the first thing that we talk about for the first 10 minutes. And then the next 50 minutes are about life. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because if you were ever to sit in a treatment room, just like a fly, you would say, wow, these people really open up to you. And it's the first time you meet them. And I'll find out who cheated on who. And I mean, the most intimate details, everything. And that gives me life. I'm like, yes, keep talking. Tell me more. Because it's so fun to exchange stories. Everyone has a story. And not only does everyone have a story, but you never know what someone is dealing with. So I also put a lot of weight on that too. I am very humbled that people come to see me for anything skin or injectables. And I don't decrease value in that. They could have been dealing with something just a moment before they walked into the door. Mm-hmm. So the experience that I want to give them is one of personalization and attention so that they feel good while they're there. They get 1 hour with me, and I want them to forget everything, just as we're forgetting the 1 hour that we're here, or 12 hours.
12, till tomorrow.
And
we have 12 hours of memory card
correct.
left.
So now I lost my train of thought. But anyways, that I think everyone's story matters, and it can be as simple or as devastating as it is, and we can learn something from everything, whether we're going to apply it personally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So,
yeah, actually, what I've learned from this podcast, sitting here, interviewing, just like I think I've done like 50, let's say.
That's a lot.
You know how much value I've gained from different conversations? It's changed the model of my business. It's changed me as a father before, as this one may plant that seed to change some aspects of how I'm fathering. It's just, there's so much value that society will never see that come through mics. And why the mics and why the camera and why the lights? Because if I told you, let's go to Starbucks and sit down and just have a coffee for 2 hours and discuss life, you might be like, yeah, I got shit to do, man. Like, no offense, but I got a family at home and that sounds great, but not really.
Right.
But now this becomes a safe space, right? Where we're willing to be vulnerable. And we're willing to share whatever it is that we choose to share. We could share it with whoever we want to share with, but at the same time, again, we're just completely disengaged. How on fire was I when I first walked in the door and I sat you down? I couldn't even find the plugs to put things in.
And you just sit down.
Yeah, I was like, please just sit down.
Let me get out of your way
yeah.
here.
So how I felt then when I first walked in the room, flustered with everything that's going on outside of here. I got a building that's being completely reconstructed, issues with employees, different things that go on as you run a business. Right. And then right now, I'm just here.
And none of that matters right now.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
So